Hi, David here, and welcome back to the channel where we're looking at the teaching of divine love through the automatic writings of the early 20th century medium James Padgett. In last Sunday's video, 10.9, we looked at several messages to James Padgett from John, Mark, and Nicodemus, as well as one from Jesus. So we've started widening the range of people in spirit whose testimony we are hearing. In today's video, we're going to continue with a message from Lazarus, a New Testament figure who was supposedly raised from the dead. As we will see from Lazarus's message, that isn't quite what happened, although the New Testament story as we have it does recall a real incident. The story of Lazarus is told in the Gospel attributed to John in chapter 11. Briefly, Jesus receives word that Lazarus is ill. His home is in Bethany, which is 15 stadia from Jerusalem, so just under 2 miles in new money. That would take about 30 or 40 minutes to walk. So Jesus makes the journey, meets Lazarus's 2 sisters, Mary and Martha, and performs a healing upon Lazarus, who thereafter recovers. Lazarus must have been deeply unconscious, as his people were already grieving when Jesus arrived, thinking he had died. In this message from August 5, 1915, Lazarus tells the tale as follows. I am here, Lazarus. I was the one whom Jesus called from the grave. I merely want to say that I was not dead when I was resurrected, but had on me the sleep of death. John 11:11. And I was not entirely a spirit separated from my body. I know this because if I had been a wholly separated spirit, Jesus could not have brought me to life again. No spirit, once entirely liberated from the body, can ever return to it and reanimate the body. I know the Bible says, or the inference from what it says, is that I was dead, John 11:14, but this is not true, as I have above stated. So Lazarus reminds us clearly that if he had been dead, there is nothing that could have been done for him. Part of the difficulty is that the New Testament account is a bit contradictory. At one point, Jesus is reported as saying Lazarus was not dead. Later, he is reported as saying that he is. Over time, the New Testament account was rewritten as a parable about Jesus being able to overcome death or saving people from death. This is an echo of his teaching that through sharing in divine love, the human soul becomes an immortal one, and therefore will not know death. But that requires a certain rewriting of what actually happened on that day in Bethany. What happened on that day is still remarkable enough. Spiritual healing effective to help someone to recover from a coma is no small thing. And it is one of the great blessings of my life that I have been privileged to work as a healer, with occasional happy, if unexpected, results. One of the things that Jesus teaches is that the soul who shares in divine love is a more effective channel for spiritual healing from God. Knowing this, it becomes obvious what was being demonstrated on that day in Bethany. There is a more recent message from Jesus in which he also takes the time to recount this incident from his perspective. One of the things he does is to take chapter 11 of the Gospel attributed to John and go through the beginning of it, almost line by line, explaining which parts are accurate and which were added later by someone other than John. That explanation is a good demonstration of just how huge a task it would be to recreate the New Testament texts as originally written. This is a question a number of Padgett's communicators discuss from time to time, and it's obvious that none of them regard it as worthwhile. They're much more interested in getting across what they now know, which is much more than they knew when they walked this earth, and a fuller understanding of what Jesus teaches is part of that. Which is why Lazarus quickly gets onto what he's been doing more recently. I am now in the celestial heavens, in a sphere that is not numbered, and very near those spheres in which the disciples live. My sisters are also in the celestial heavens, and we all believed in the teachings of the Master, and consequently became imbued with his doctrine of the necessity for the divine love to come into our souls. While on earth, Jesus did teach us that God had again bestowed on humankind this divine love, and we believed it. I know that the disciples were taught this same doctrine, and just how far they understood this teaching, I do not know. It is strange that they did not declare it in their Gospels. But such seems to be the fact, and it is unaccountable why this important truth was not preserved and taught in their writings. Well, we've already seen that some of those who wrote accounts of Jesus' life did not fully understand this teaching of divine love. And it becomes clear from later messages through Padgett that very few of those who came after the apostles had a clear understanding of it. Many of the changes to the writings in the New Testament were simply scribes changing passages they didn't understand. The closest the New Testament comes to mentioning the teaching of divine love is in John's Gospel, where it records Jesus as saying that in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, it is necessary to be born again, or reborn. Even then, without knowledge of the teaching of divine love, it is not obvious what that saying is referring to. But it is clear from what Lazarus says that there were some who understood the teaching of divine love and accepted it. I know that this is the truth, and that only those who have received this love in their hearts can become inhabitants of the celestial heavens. Men may refuse to believe this great truth if they will, and think that by attending church and worshipping God in their service with their lips, they will be able to enter the kingdom. But they will find themselves mistaken. I am supremely happy and want all humanity to be so. I came to you to inform you of these truths, so that my testimony may be added to that of those who may have written to you. Jesus is in the spirit world, working to teach mortals and spirits his truths. He comes to you and writes, and you must believe, for it is a fact. I must stop now, so I will say good night, Lazarus. It's interesting that Lazarus says he lives in a sphere that isn't numbered. The only ones of which that is true are the higher divine love or celestial spheres. There appears to be 3 distinct celestial spheres that lie beyond the 7th spiritual sphere, or heaven. I mentioned in a previous video that beyond the 3rd celestial sphere, distinctions are less clear, and the environments intermingle. Anyway, I just mentioned that for interest, as it's well beyond anywhere I'm likely to end up. That message from Lazarus wasn't too long or complex, although it is fascinating, so I'm going to take the chance to look at another one in today's video. Continuing the theme of adding testimony from others associated with Jesus, there is a message from John the Baptist, which was given to James Padgett on August 10, 1915, just 5 days after the one from Lazarus. John comes forward to share a little about himself, but you can see from the message that he is focused on doing what he can to persuade or reassure James Padgett that the people communicating with him are who they say they are, and that he should be confident in undertaking the work that is being asked of him. John writes, "I am here, John the Baptist. I come to tell you that I am now the harbinger of the Master, as I was when on earth, and that he is the true Jesus who writes to you in all the communications which you will receive signed by him. I tell you this so that you will believe and not doubt the messages that you will receive. He has written you, and you must rely on what he says, for what he has said to you will surely come to pass." In saying this, John is still doing the same task he undertook when he walked the earth. I am the same John who appeared in Palestine and announced his coming. And as I told them what was actually to take place, so I tell you what is actually taking place. And you will not only receive the messages of truth which he will write you, but they will also be distributed to all humankind, wherever the written languages of the world exist, and are spoken or written. So you have before you a wonderful and important mission, and one that will do more to make men true brothers and lovers of God than anything that has happened since the Master was on earth and taught and preached the truths of his Father, and did good to mortal men. So again, we see this ongoing determination to convince and reassure Padgett that it is important he relies upon the messages he is receiving and puts his doubts aside. It's a lot to ask of anyone, and as you read through the messages, it becomes clear that Padgett's communicators know the magnitude of their task. That said, you do see that they too have occasional questions of their own. John tells Padgett, "I sometimes have wondered why you should have been selected, as I see that your soul development has not been nearly as great as that of many others who now live and have lived. But as he, Jesus, has made the selection, we understand that he knows what is best and that his selection must be the right one. And as a consequence of this, we who are his followers in the celestial world are trying our best to forward the cause and help you. And I must tell you that you have behind you in this great work, supporting and maintaining you, more spiritual power than any mortal has ever had before." This may sound surprising to you, but it is true. As I say, you do get a hint there that Padgett isn't the only one surprised at what is being attempted through him. It is easier for people in spirit, though, simply to accept what is happening and crack on with it, because they have a trust in Jesus, born of intimate knowledge of him. Whereas Padgett has only discovered the ability to communicate much more recently. So he is still in the process of building up the knowledge that will enable him to trust fully. All of this might seem as though it must be frustrating for people in spirit, but aware as they are, they know the dynamics involved. At its best, mediumship involves the development of the whole person, which is a useful corrective to the idea that mediumship is a skill that can be picked up quickly, or that it is something that is ever fully learned. during the short time we spend upon this earth. John concludes his message to James Padgett with a reminder of that need for wider spiritual development and of the role of divine love in development. So, my brother, for such I must call you now, try to acquire a faith in the love and desire of God to save all humankind from the errors of their lives, and to make them one with him, which will enable you to stand forth as the representative of the Master and the authoritative teacher of his great truths. I am now in the celestial heavens, and am very close to Jesus in his home, and in his love for the Father and for all humanity. I have powers which are great, and love which is of the divine essence of God. And what I tell you now, I will tell to the world when the opportunity presents itself. Your brother in Christ, John the Baptist. The next video in this series, looking at divine love, video 1011, which will be uploaded next Sunday, will look at a message from the Apostle John, which corrects some more of the things stated in the Gospel attributed to him as it has come down to us. It's a fascinating message in which John takes some time to explain what was going on with Judas and his decision to lead the Jewish authorities to Jesus, which then led to his trial and execution. The next midweek video, 211, will look at another message from Joseph Salyard's, James Padgett's old law professor. We've already seen, I think, 3 messages from Professor Salyard's, and he's always interesting. In this message, he explains the importance of developing our soul perceptions rather than being preoccupied with mental or intellectual development, which is interesting coming from a former law professor. As a former lawyer myself and PhD survivor, I know it can be tricky to learn not to place too much reliance on intellectual ability. The things we can do with the head are wonderful, but it's important to keep it in the service of the heart, lest we wander off on unhelpful detours. So I hope to see you for one or both of those upcoming videos. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed this one, please do take a moment to like it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It all helps to spread knowledge of this material, so it's good to join in the sharing. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.